For 30 years, Don and I traveled mostly to Europe. We went to the Mediterranean countries. We went to Greece, we went to Portugal, Spain, and Italy. We had various shows showing these different kinds of paintings, and Don, the kind of painter he was more on either location or in taking slides and then projecting them and painting from them. But that covered a large part of our life, as well as going up and down California and Yosemite. We got interested in the missions, and so we had various shows with that, one of which was at RCC, in which Don showed paintings that he had done, the way the missions look now.
I met Don probably 25 years ago through an event at the Riverside Art Museum. And when I saw his work, loved it. And over the years, we'd always done a calendar for our customers. So I asked Don at that point to pick a subject downtown that was interesting, and then we started working with him. Well, we probably worked with him for, well, until his death, for about 20 years.
For 20 years.
Yes. And it was a great relationship, and he was very flexible in that after that first year, I would pick a subject, and he would go out and do the work. So depending on what was going on in town, a restoration of a building like the historic courthouse, we tried to really identify something in the region, the Redlands Smiley Library or Old Town Temecula, or wherever we were opening a new branch. We would have him go and do some historic site in that area.
How did you first meet him?
Well, we owned a restaurant out in La Cadena, and he loved Italian food. Some way or another, and I'll never remember how or when, we became friends. And so he used to come in the back door. But he was great. He was just a wonderful, wonderful mentor. He really, really was. Don had a zest for life that most people don't. And knew Don for 40, 50 years. And I would, everything that I did, I would either take to him or he would come up when we were all feeling better. I used to cook at least once a week for my men friends, and he was more often invited than anybody else. He always sit to the left of me. And a lot of the people that came were artists. But Don had a passion for his art that I've tried to get. I figured that if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, then you don't ever achieve it. It never gets to be anything special. But he had it. And every so often I would do one, and he would say, you got the passion. That's a wow. I said, okay.
What was your relationship to Don O'Neill?
Well, it started when Don's family moved from Washington, D.C., migrated out to Riverside, California in the early 60s. And at that time, I was about 5 years old, and I got to, their families actually lived with us for a few days, waiting for their house to become available, as well as the furniture trucks to arrive. And that's when we started, that's when I started my relationship with the O'Neills. And we spent many weekends and evenings doing things together as families. We both came from, we both had large families, and we got to spend a tremendous amount of time camping and going on picnics. And the after picnic, we got to go over to their house or our house, and we'd finish up with ping pong tournaments and just a lot of liveliness. singing and playing music and listened to the piano.
You knew him fairly well then from
Oh, very
working
well.
with him for 20
Yeah,
years.
very well. And I would go to his studio and we'd talk about, you know, what he was planning, and most times he'd do a rough work for me. Mm-hmm. And then we'd sometimes be creative and move things around. Like in Temecula, the neighborhood he picked was good, but there was an old bank building a block away, so I had him move it over to that street in the picture. Nobody's ever questioned that it doesn't really exist there, but or if we did, it's kind of interesting. I had him do Citrus Heritage Park, and the view he did of this building out there with all the citrus trees and so on, he had a huge concrete trash can right in the middle of the picture, right in the front. I said, Don, I go, can't you do something? So he moved it.
Nice.
So we would chat, and sometimes he'd do colors, and we'd talk about, well, maybe this would be a better color for the reproduction for the calendar.
Don was easy to get along with. He seemed to like everybody. He, in my mind, was very amazing in that he had many men friends, most of which were either painters or photographers. I found him to be introspective, hard worker. He was an architect before he became a painter, and painting was his joy, but it was founded on his foundation of being an architect, which meant that he enjoyed structure, and I think mostly he was open to ideas. When he first began painting, I think his paintings were more or less in tones and gray and black and rather diminished color, but since I was a colorist, I think he gradually became one also, although in a different style.
My uncles had a real ease about him. I was able to develop a pretty good relationship, and being able to go in and to Don's office and be able to sit down with him and just talk about life. And he would share his interest in not only the as an artist world, in his world, but he'd always be considerate to knowing, hey, how are you doing and what are you doing?
He was really quite a rogue and really a curmudgeon. My mother loved him. He was very, very respectful of older people.
He always had so much to offer through his paintings, and also his sitting down and talking to him and talking about his journeys and talking about his experiences. So if you ask about his goals and his dreams, he was living them.
He was very outgoing and excited about his work, and he loved to talk about how originally he was an architect and how much that helped him in his art and his understanding of buildings and structure. And if you look at most of his works, at least that we have, I know he did a lot of other things, most of them have buildings in them, and it's just amazing how well he captured them.
Yes.
But he was always fun, and he loved to come by the office and just chat, about what's going on in his work. And I love going to his studio because he had so much going on there. It was great to see all the different things that he was focused on.
Actually, originally he was an architect. When we first knew him, he was an architect. And he took up the watercolor so that he could do his renderings of his artwork. And initially when he did them, he would always do them straight on. Very little perspective. If you look at some of his first work, it was straight on, no vanishing points. And I would always ask him, why are you doing that? He says, I know how to do that. When I know how to do the other, I'll do it. Well, he quickly learned how to do the other.
How would you describe his artwork?
I would call it a soft edge, and I would also call it an impromptu, meaning that he could take a blank sheet of paper and could finish it in a very short period of time and also make it look easy. Don's was representational, but it also carried this flavor of being done on the spot and was loose and easy, and I think that he had a lot of collectors that really liked that way of
So
painting.
he would generally work on more than one piece at a time.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, he was all the time, yeah. And it was always, well, Don, remember, we need to have our piece done by this date because it has to go to the printers, and the printers need so much time, and then you have to approve how, they set it up to make sure all the colors are just right. And because we have our calendars for our customers every year by the day after Thanksgiving for the next calendar year. And it was always tough sometimes because he had so much going on or he was traveling. To hit those dates, we'd start talking and pick a place in June. And then in July and August, he'd be hopefully working on it. And by September, we'd be getting nervous. And really, by early October, we had to have it done so we could do all the rest of the work before printing. That was our every year.
Every year?
We did a year after year. And it was rare that we'd skip a year with Don unless there was something unusual going on in another town that he couldn't get to for us.
I hope that Riverside doesn't forget who he was and how important he was to the art of Riverside and the things that he has done that we will have forever, that'll remind us of what was here before, because it's changing so fast and so drastically. And some of the things that he's done, of course, will never change. I mean, even his Fox Theater picture has changed. The buildings and the trees around it, it's different. His painting that he did looking up 6th Street, which I have one also that I don't think comes close to his. I think it might be one of his best works. But 20, 30 years from now, it's not going to look like that anymore. And we're going to have those paintings of Don's.
But when I really knew Dad was a master was after he passed away, and people were coming to visit his office, his studio, from all around the United States and perhaps around the world to come and give their respects to him.
The area to the left, or between Orange Street and North Main, was all dairy farms. One dairy farm after another. And we would quite often go there, and Don would take pictures or do a plein air painting. And he would always end up with something that was so wonderful.
To sort and mix, commingle all the colors and do it in such a way that, again, it was one of a kind and brings so much life to the picture.
do you have a favorite of his works?
Well, between the Mission Inn and the Fox Theater, he did a lot for us. He did different views, different angles over the years. So I'd say that is. But then I also had him do one for me personally for my office of the crab cooker in Newport Beach, because I figured, and again, he did that for me more than 20 years ago. And I figured, well, if I can't live there, at least I can look at it every day when I'm in my office, because I always loved to eat at the crab cooker in Newport.